I remember the exact moment the fear turned into something else. It wasn't the grand tactical display or the burning star charts that did it. It was his hand. I saw it myself, standing just a few feet away in the shadows of the command deck. Cale's hand, encased in that smooth white composite armor, rested gently over Alara's trembling fingers. She was a high grazer, delicate and wide-eyed, evolved to sense danger from every angle. He was Terran, and up until that second, he had been a faceless statue to her. The air in the room was thick, smelling of ozone and the terrified pheromones Alara's people couldn't help but release. The hum of the ship's drive felt like a heartbeat under our feet. Cale leaned in, invading her personal space in a way that should have terrified a prey species, but instead, he seemed to be grounding her. He wasn't looking at the holographic carnage of the grazing sectors. He was looking right at her masked reflection in the viewport. Look, you have to understand where we were before that moment. Just 3 days prior, the concadet of herds was facing extinction. I remember the reports coming in static-filled screams from the outer colonies. The concordat military doctrine was elegant, I suppose, if you like geometry. They built walls. They formed rigid lines of battle, expecting the enemy to meet them shield to shield. It was civilized warfare, but the Volks marauders didn't care about civilization. They didn't want a battle. They wanted a feed. I watched the initial strategic meetings. It was painful. It was like watching sheep debating the wolf. Alara and her generals kept pointing to their defensive lines, unable to comprehend why the Volks just bypassed them, striking from the dark, tearing through supply chains and undefended flanks. It was asymmetric warfare at its most brutal, and the Concordat was paralyzed by it. They had paradigm blindness. They assumed all intelligent life evolved to protect the herd, to stand together and graze. Then the Terrans arrived. They walked onto the bridge like ghosts, masked, silent. Truth is, they scared the hell out of the bridge crew. I remember Cale standing there, his helmet a blank, reflective obsidian. He didn't move like the grazers. He didn't sway or check his periphery. He stood perfectly still, his attention focused like a laser. "Your walls are useless," Cale had said. His voice was synthesized, stripped of inflection. "You are trying to herd a storm." Alara had looked at him, confused, her large side-facing eyes blinking rapidly. "We must hold the line. It is the only way to ensure the safety of the young." "The Vuleks are not fighting you," Cale countered, stepping closer to the tactical map. "They are hunting you. There's a difference." I saw the shiver run down Alara's spine. She knew he was right, but she didn't understand why. She didn't understand that binocular vision is a weapon, that the ability to focus entirely on a single target, to ignore the periphery, is the mark of a predator. And that brings me back to the hand on the console. The moment the debate ended, Alara looked up at Cale, her chest heaving with the weight of 1 billion lives. "You speak of their tactics as if you know their minds," she whispered. "How can you anticipate the monsters?" Cale didn't pull away. He just held her gaze, or where his gaze would be behind that glass. The room went quiet. "Because we aren't like you, Alara," he said softly. "We don't build walls to keep the monsters out." He reached up to the seals of his helmet. A hiss of pressurized air cut through the room. "We go into the dark to find them." I held my breath. I think everyone on that bridge did. When the helmet slid back, it wasn't a dramatic fanfare. It was just a quiet mechanical retreat of metal, revealing the flesh underneath. Cale's face was human. Rough skin, a shadow of stubble, a scar running along his jawline. But it was the eyes that froze the room. 2 eyes set forward, locked in a singular, predatory focus. To you and me, he looked like a soldier. But to Alara, to the Concordat crew, I saw the way they flinched. It was instinct pure, evolutionary panic. They were staring at the face of a wolf. Alara's hand jerked back from the console, her breath catching in a sharp, terrified whistle. The silence on the bridge was sudden and absolute. It wasn't the respectful silence of a subordinate. It was the paralyzed stillness of a herd that smells blood. "Do not look away," Cale said. His voice was raw now, stripped of the synthesizer, human and deep. He reached out, not to grab her, but to rest his hand next to hers again. The heat of his skin against the cool metal seemed to anchor the room. "We are the monsters on your side, Alara. Use us." She looked at him, really looked at him, trembling. I saw the war inside her, the biological urge to run clashing with the desperate need to survive. Slowly, painfully, she nodded. "Show them," she whispered. The mood shifted instantly. It was electric. Kale didn't shout orders. He simply engaged the Terran link. On the tactical display, the Terran icons didn't form a line. They scattered. Truth is, it was terrifying to watch. The Concordat ships had been playing chess. The Terrans were playing distinct, violent poker. They went dark, cutting emissions, disappearing from the sensors only to reappear on the Vulek's flanks. It was pack tactics, pure and simple. I watched the Vulek's formations shatter. They were used to driving prey into a corner, not being stalked by something hungrier than they were. The Terran ships moved with a lethal, fluid aggression, tearing into the marauders with kinetic batteries that didn't just disable, they obliterated. "They're panicking," Alara said, her voice trembling. She was watching the enemy fleet fragment, confused by the sudden aggression. "They're realizing they aren't the top of the food chain anymore," Kale murmured. He hadn't moved. His eyes were darting across the holographic stream, dissecting the battlefield with that terrifying binocular focus. He was hunting. When the last Vult ship drifted dead in the void, the cheer you'd expect never came. The bridge remained quiet. The crew looked at the screen, then at Kale, then at their own hooves and hands. They had won, but the cost was their innocence. They'd invited predators into the fold. Kale turned to Alara. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him looking tired, human. He offered a small, sad smile, a baring of teeth that made a nearby communications officer step back. "The sector is clear," he said softly. Alara didn't step back. "I'll give her that." She was brave. She reached out, her fingers hovering inches from his face, tracing the air where his forward-facing eyes held hers. She understood now. The universe wasn't safe. And sometimes, to survive the night, you have to make friends with the things that can see in the dark. "Thank you," she breathed, though her heart was still hammering against her ribs. I could hear it. Kale nodded, slowly sealing his helmet back on. The obsidian mask slid into place, hiding the predator, leaving only the soldier. The tension in the room broke, just a little. "We'll stand guard, High Grazer," the synthesized voice returned. "Sleep well." But as he walked away, I saw Alara watching him. She wasn't looking at a savior anymore. She was looking at a weapon she had unleashed, wondering if she could ever truly put it back in the sheath. And me? I just watched the stars. They looked a little colder than before.